Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope you all are doing great. Welcome to Unrushed with Nadia, where we slow down, dive deep, and let the conversation flow. Today, I have an amazing woman as my guest, Chloë Fèvre, an independent advisor, strategist, and trainer who specializes in violence against children prevention. Let's experience her. Let's welcome Chloë. Hello, Chloë.
Hi, Nadia. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming, and you bring a wealth of experience to create safer environment for children and foster impactful strategies for sustainable change. Thank you so much for doing this important work for our children and future generation.
No, thank you for giving me space to talk about this work.
Of course, I had to give you the space because this is such an important work that you are doing. Chloë, I would like you to tell us about your work. You advising governments and international organizations who are focusing on such critical issue. In your experience, what are some of the biggest barriers or challenges to implement effective children protection policies, and how can these be overcome at a global level?
Yeah, it's such an important question. I think, you kind of pinpoint to the core of it straight away. Look, Nadia, I think honestly, the biggest obstacles of all of them is indifference and the lack of prioritization. So basically what happened everywhere in the world, in each and every country, is like when we have a scandal and there is kind of an act of violence against a child, there is a emotions, national emotions, everybody kind of say it's unacceptable, we should do something about it. And then the next scandal comes up and the next priority happen and we tend to forget about it. The truth is there's no government in this world and no country that has given the priority to preventing violence against children. Zero, not one. So of course there are countries that are very advanced to it, and I'm thinking about the north of Europe, kind of Sweden, Norway, and so forth. But thinking about, the fact that violence is so traumatic and has so many consequences of your health, your mental health, your capacity to earn a living, to socialize with others, just to enjoy your life and be happy, a happy citizen. So many consequences that are lasting consequences. And violence is really preventable. Taking into account these two facts and thinking that tomorrow's peace is built by protecting our children today, it's incredible to me to think that no country on earth has prioritized preventing violence against children. So it's really, for me, by far the biggest obstacle. And after so many years working on this issue, I think the way to, overcome that huge obstacle is to disseminate knowledge with people. Like, it is my new fight. It's like, or my new kind of venture, where I think it's fantastic to work with governments and international organizations, NGOs, and civil society. But I do think now the response is in everybody, like, kind of giving the information to the public at large, to parents, to students, to teachers, to siblings, to grandparents, kind of people who see violence and they want to do something and they just don't know. And I think more people, knowing about the issue, more we have a chance to actually demand governments to put a priority on protecting children.
So, Chloë, it's very unfortunate that the children have to face this violence and it becomes trauma for them, because whatever happened in your childhood remains with you throughout your life. Only last week, I had amazing lineup of guests and we were discussing that how unfortunate it is that the females and young women, old women and girls are facing domestic violence. And now this week we are discussing child and this week we are discussing violence against children. Honestly, the world is not going in the right direction from what we are discussing or from what we are seeing. And I would like to understand from you that you are into this work, and I would really love to know that when people want to go to all the after graduation fancy organizations, banks and development sector, but the fancy ones, how did you came into this very important and serious work? What what was the mental shift that said, okay, now this is the time I want to work with this? And how how you see, what is the main primary reason for this? Do you think the parents are doing this because they're frustrated, economic challenge is real, relationship problems are there? Is it happening at schools at large, at gyms? Is it outside more or is it inside more? Like, is it out of house problem or is it inside problem? What have you seen?
So it's everywhere. One thing that, we always, when we talk about violence and violence against women and girls or violence against children, we say, well, that's the exception. It's never in my family. It's in the other family. It's never in my school. It's in the other school. Never in my community, the other community, right? It's like, it's beautiful because if everybody, would say the same, then we would have a really peaceful world. The truth is we have half of all children worldwide, which is huge. So who have experienced, are experiencing at the moment or will experience violence, any kind of violence, before the age of 18. So that's not the exception, that's the norm. It's huge. It's really widespread. A lot of the violence happen at home. And I do think a lot of violence happen at home because parents don't know better. Because, when you think about parenting, it's interesting because I always talk to colleagues and friends about it. It's like, that's the most important job in the world. To
Yes.
kind of give birth to children and, educate them and grow with them and, show them the world and so forth. And yet it's the only job that is totally improvised. You don't get a certificate to become a parent. You don't get you don't get guidance on these kind of things. And so for such an important job for society and for peace, again, I think it's incredible. Now, more and more, we have resources that have been developed, to guide parents and to show them better. Because, before it was good luck, you had a good education, good parents, and, you were happy during your childhood. Bad luck, your parents just were reproducing what they suffered when they were child themselves. And so, good luck, bad luck, but, totally unfair, right? So now there are a lot of resources that are available, kind of very didactic, very easy, user-friendly, to teach parents and to say, look, it's a very tough job also. And plus now, since society is evolving so quickly, everything is so fast, it's even harder because the, kind of the gap in terms of communication, understanding, grow also wider. And I do, one of the things that we do in violence prevention is actually have these resources, kind of disseminated and reach the hands of as many parents as possible. So, but as you were saying, it's not only at home, it's also in school, which is a huge issue as well. And it's in the community on the way to school, from school, but also in the community after school. And it's also online. So basically, any sphere of influence where children grow and evolve and live, you have risks for violence. And again, kind of we're talking about 1 billion children who are victimized, which is like, it's mind-blowing for me when, thinking that with all the tools we have and all the knowledge and research we have, we're not doing better. Like, I think it's like, it's really kind of time to wake up. Because then, as you were saying, also, the world is not going in the right direction. And, many of us, kind of who want a better world, social justice, more solidarity, are looking at what's happening and say, whoa, more conflicts, less human rights, kind of the women's rights and children's rights are going backwards in many parts of the world. It's time we mobilize because we're talking about humanity in the end and the future of humanity. So one, it's totally widespread. It happens everywhere. It's really a question of, changing norms and, what it means to educate, but what it means to resolve conflict, what integrity means, what gender relations means, what it means to be a man or growing up doesn't need to involve violence necessarily, what it means to be a girl. A woman doesn't need to be linked to victimhood. All these things that, need to be worked on at the same time so that we can respond to this huge challenge.
Chloe, the seriousness of this issue is evident from the expressions you have while explaining all this, and like how your eyes are speaking. So I can relate to your heart right now that the issue is very serious and how deep and how large its negative impact is, unfortunately. And you have worked on front lines of the child protection. Do you think there is one misconception people often have about violence against children? And how does your strategic work challenge that misconception?
I think one, kind of big misconception is violence has always been there and will always be there, right? It's like, raising a child, well, when the child misbehaves, it's normal, to maybe use punishment or whatever, or even, kind of shout or, kind of threaten a child so that, they will understand and learn the lesson. And I think, for many, many, many people in any country, it's like violence is taken as a given in society. It's like it's part of being human. One, it is not. First, violence is learned. And if it's learned, it unlearned, and we have ways of doing it. But above all, it can not be learned in the first place, right? It's a little bit like illnesses or pandemic. Everybody remembers, COVID-19 was like, a few years ago, 5 years ago. And many are suffering from consequences still today. But, for the pandemic, what happened? Like, you had scientists looking at what was responsible for the transmission and the spread of the pandemic of COVID-19. And once they understood what were the main risk factors for the spread, then they were able to give advice and they were able to recommend some interventions. That's why, for example, they said, well, people who are most at risk need to, for example, if you were above 60 years old or you had preconditions of health issues and so forth, like you need to protect yourself even more. And for the general public, it was more in terms of, well, you need, social distancing on you need, kind of to wear a mask so that you can protect yourself from the transmission of the virus. And thanks to all these different measures, we managed to break the transmission cycle and to reduce considerably the transmission of COVID-19, and then the pandemic could end. Well, violence is exactly the same. It is the same. So it's kind of, it's not necessarily kind of a health issues like pandemic in terms of illness, but it's a social illness. It's a social pandemic. And so it works the same way.
It is high time we make this as an emergency and all the stakeholders, including government, everybody comes forward and do something about it. Because, of course, we are not saying that, we're not comparing this with COVID, but this is not a small issue.
Yeah, but we can compare
it deserves
it
an emergency.
Look, I'm all about comparing it with COVID because I do think that people do understand when we compare it with COVID. Like, people agreed to be locked down because of COVID per year due to violence and gun violence. And gun violence is related to violence in childhood, because violence is transmissible and you have an intergenerational effect, which is, dramatic. And so, if people agree, to lock their barriers and be locked down in an apartment or in a house, whatever, and if they understood that violence works the same way and from reproducing itself, I think, kind of the understanding of these social phenomena would change drastically. Because now, we have, it's a very political issue, kind of, the violence. It's like violence and crime, and then the good versus the bad people, and the good parents versus the bad parents, and the good school versus the bad school, etc. In reality, everything is moving, and it's not good versus bad. It's like, either I had the chance of being protected, and so I didn't have to learn, the violent behaviors, or I was not, and I was really at risk. And so I didn't have any, factors protecting me to build up my resiliency to it. And so, of course, if you explain that, politically, it's not you won't have a lot of votes. Let's be honest. So it's always the same thing, you will say, well, we need to lock down the bad people and then, protect the good people. But it's really misunderstanding how the violence phenomenon reproduces itself. So, kind of to go back to your question on kind of what is misconception and what we could do about it. It's like if we could educate and elevate the debate a little bit further in terms of, why does someone behave violently while another person in similar circumstances doesn't? Why a country has more violence than another country, or why kind of a city or community shows more violence than another? Then kind of we can understand, what are the issues at stake, and we can work on lessening the issue. And then it doesn't become, taken for granted, human beings are violent, we need to live with it. It becomes, no, it's like a pandemic, we don't want it, we work on it. And we work on it, and we have the sense, and we have the research, and we have the tools to work on it.
I'll give you an example here. When we go to shopping and we are at a public place, no adult can start shouting. If they shout, the security comes and takes them away.
Yeah.
Why does it not happen? Why it should be in their unconscious mind that if they're shouting or doing violence on the children for no reason, and they will be held accountable. I think, and I'll come back to political influence for legislation, because of course legislation is only possible through political influence. Education, you can do it on individual and that also is important, that government is an important stakeholder for both legislation and education for this. I'll ask you that how do you ensure that the solutions you advocate for are both comprehensive, adaptable to the unique challenges of the different regions or cultural contexts? Because you said at one country it can be on a increasing, and in another country there could be less cases.
Yeah.
So how do we see about this?
Yeah, now we have enough research. For many years, you could read any report and you would have in the conclusion the same conclusion. We need more research. We need more research. Now we have, kind of enough research to be able to identify what we call the core elements, like, kind of, the minimum elements that we need for an intervention to be effective. And instead of, kind of saying, well, you can reproduce these interventions, the Good School Toolkit done in Uganda, or you can reproduce the other intervention done in Pakistan, or whatever you want, which, honestly is very, it's very virtual. It doesn't resonate with people because, right now, I'm in Kinshasa, I'm in the DRC. Don't talk to me about an intervention I have never seen in my life. So all that, it's a lot of how you present it and how people connect to it. Instead of doing that, if you say, if you want to prevent violence in school, you need 5 elements. And the rest of it, the way you implement these 5 elements is up to you. So, kind of what we advise is like, you have all the students participate, you have the teachers participate, you have the parents participate. But then, you as a teacher, you want to do that in your classroom. You just need to do that. The rest is up to you. So participation and flexibility. And I think that's the way forward, because one, there's no one who knows better their context than the people who live in that context, right? It's like, we talk about the native expert. That's correct. And the only thing that we kind of, the people who have studied, kind of policies and programs, it's like more, make it as simple as possible. And then say, you need to make sure that the bare minimum is there, because if you don't have that, then we can't, see that we can't hope that it will be effective. But once you have that, the rest, you adapt depending your language, your culture, your issue. It could be, for example, we work a lot with emotion and social emotional learning. Of course, first you need to understand that I'm experiencing anger before working on anger. And so, all these things that we do. But you can work on that, so that's the bare minimum. But for example, your issue is violence against indigenous girls in Bolivia. And in another country, the issue will be violence against physically talented children. Or it could be against children from a religious group, or children on the move, or kind of, then you adapt. But you have kind of your core elements, and you know that you need to do that. The rest, if you play with that game against the other games, up to you. If you use, you prefer doing that emotion before the other, up to you. You want to have different images, up to you. Kind of, the teacher really takes whatever the intervention we're recommending and make it them. And I think that the way to go, because there's not only a lot of knowledge, but there's also a lot of creativity and hunger for solution. And so,
I agree.
Yeah.
Agreed, Chloe, that there is a different culture and there are different reasons. So we really need to penetrate into reasons also, because there is no solid base, because if an elder or anyone who is angry can hit a child, it's not an explanation. It should not be acceptable by anyone, and it is not acceptable. We all have human rights, be it a child, be it an adult, and nobody can start. It's the same, because there are cultures, when a man comes from the work and he starts hitting the wife, like, why? If a woman
Yeah.
comes from work, she should also not start hitting. We're talking about human rights, we're talking about sense here.
Yeah.
It's the modern times we are living in, and we should prevailing in our daily activities, in our daily dealings with people. And so I agree with you that one culture cannot apply to another culture. The solution that might work for one country might not work for another. Plus, there are religious challenges also, and religious restrictions also. And then there are other communities, colonies, and it's different. And I think every country has to set up their own system to combat this. I'll ask you
Yeah.
that you work with the government, NGOs, and community. And how do you see that some of them were able to do effective collaboration? And if we can replicate those and in other regions, and we can be successful.
Yeah. I mean,
Some activities, some initiatives.
yeah. So, we talked about, everything that is going not so well. But there are also many things that are going well. And as Enrich, your podcast is about, is also, putting the light on what is going well. So different countries, Colombia is one of them, for example. Colombia has suffered from violence for decades and decades. And as a result, also kind of studied the issue of violence and developed innovative programs that kind of focused on children, so that children from a very early age could develop resiliency, could help each other, could have a sense of solidarity and empathy for the other. One example is what is called aulas en paz, so the classroom in peace. And it's social emotional learning. So I understand my emotion. When I understand my emotion, I understand you have emotion too. And I understand that if I pull your hair, you won't be happy. As, kind of when I didn't know about that, because I didn't take the time to put myself in your shoes, I just pulling your hair because, I just wanted to pull your hair. Punto. And so with kind of simple exercises and games, we teach children empathy. We teach children what is good when you're in group and what is less good. We teach children also about physical integrity. Because unfortunately, in many countries where there is a lot of sexual violence against children, girls and boys, many children are confused. And so it's kind of in the classroom that everybody can touch. But there are places in your body, it's only you. Only you. Nobody can touch there. But it's very important, because for a child, looking at the surroundings, it's so confusing. And, there's also kind of, clubs and boys clubs you can have to have safe spaces to talk about what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a girl, to try to have them reflect on the fact that, you've grown up in a community maybe, or you've seen male dominating female. And maybe your father was hitting your mom, and maybe, kind of your uncle was, trying to abuse your older sister, kind of things. But then let's pause a minute. Let's, kind of think together about, what is equality? What is difference between a girl and a boy? While, a boy is considered more important and more deserving of education than a girl, is it normal? Is it true that a girl, good at playing sport? Really? And then, you begin having the debates between the, kind of the kids, and they themselves challenge it. And so, it's much more powerful when, you challenge it yourself than, you've been told that it's not good. you shouldn't do that. It comes from one ear and then it disappears. But when they experience and they reflect, and then you can have different games, like I was mentioning in Colombia. So they did that. For example, they were very innovative in the kind of intervention you can do. So after school, for example, you could have some activities playing football, and with one rule, like Football con Corazon, which is an association that is doing fantastic work. They had one rule: a girl had to make the first goal. And so what does it mean? It means that as a boy, I need to help her mark the goal, because if it's not a girl, it means we are losing. And so it means that now that girl as my teammate, and she's actually very useful in the team because she makes her win. All that is like, it's what it does. It opens mind for the kids to reflect. And then you have kind of the conversation afterwards with coaches and so forth. But that changes everything. And this is small tools. They cost nothing, not difficult to implement. You don't need tons of training to do that. It can be done anywhere, even in refugee camps, anywhere. But it's just a matter of giving simple tools to people who really want to change things in their communities, and show them that when you put these tools together, it's really kind of transformative. And I think in the previous question, I didn't answer totally. I think it was your second question. I think big organizations have really a responsibility, kind of UN and banks and development banks and so forth. I think we're not, I worked for them for many years, but I think, kind of it's way too global, and it's not enough concrete and, kind of being to the service of the people implementing the programs at the country level, at the community level, who, they just give me tools and I'll do it because I want to do something I just don't know. And then I think, that's really kind of, my fight now. It's like really kind of to go down, grassroots level, work with, whoever wants to know and to learn more about what can be done in a very tangible, very concrete way. So just to sum up on the country, Colombia is a great country, but there are many others. And actually, to finish on that, last week, I was in the DRC, who is very famously known for the violence against women and girls, unfortunately, and the conflict and so. But I was giving a training there, to train different people, the government, but I was training also teachers and medical doctors and different people. And the reception was amazing because just people they know, like they see their reality. They have children themselves. They want a better society for their children. They just need very concrete, again, tools that resonate with them, and, that can be done anywhere, don't cost much, and are easy to implement. So I think, if we all focus on that, we could change things much quicker.
Yeah, and that's great, Chloe, that you shared this example with us, because, it takes no money to implement such small steps, but, they help male players to understand, yes, there is a female and she is our equal player. She is talented, part of the game. We have to respect her. So at the very start, they start to learn females as their equal partners. And this is what shapes them into better humans. Really important. And I think this is something that every school can adopt for every kind of work. And they can involve both children. And there, I will also, I don't know if I'm right, correct me. I think children also learn violence against each other, because when they're not given importance, when a boy is preferred and a girl is not preferred, I'm sure the girl feels it from inside. It's a human feeling. And this also makes them violent, or at least this makes them angry. And when they're in childhood, they cannot do something. When they become young, when they become adults, and the anger explodes in the form of violence against other children. So I think probably this could also be a reason. How can we build small steps for a long-term and sustainable change? So you have already answered that. So I'll go to another question that, like the complexity with this preventing violence against children often requires only policy intervention, because it is a policy matter, but as you said, the governments are not very serious about it, but cultural and societal change also. And how do you balance the need for both top-down policy reforms and bottom-up culture shifts in your advisory role? What do you say to people when you are able to meet highest people in the government and the general public?
I think, top down or bottom up, we need to simplify. There is one particularity about violence.
Yeah.
It's like it can be very overwhelming very quickly because you have many different forms of violence. So it's violence against children. It could be physical violence, sexual violence, moral violence. It could be youth violence, homicidal violence. It could be violence against the elderly. So you have many different ways and categories to separate forms of violence. And at some point, you lose people at the top or at the bottom because we don't speak the same language. And plus, on top, at the top, we talk about security and we talk about, criminality. We have also different words and we're losing everyone. And we haven't been good in the field, honestly, to try to harmonize everything. And that's why a big issue that we have is a separation between violence against children, violence against women, youth violence, criminality. Everything is linked. The fact that there are so many things that can be done without any money or without very little money in any context, with the participation and with, of different stakeholders at the local level. And I do believe it's how things actually change. So in a way, it would be kind of a bottom-up approach. We have tried the top-down and, of course you need a top-down at some point because you need to have violence prevention institutionalized in different sectors. For example, in education, you need to have programs, you need to have violence prevention in teachers training, you also need to have violence prevention in school construction norms, all these different things, right? And in the planning, the yearly planning for the education sector. But in my experience, country who, want to institutionalize and mainstream violence prevention in their sector, in the education sector in particular, it's because it has been done at the bottom. It has been, they have seen that it could work, in different communities, in different cities. And then you have, this demand coming from people, citizens and the voters and saying we want more, we want peace for our children, we want safe learning, we want, safe schools and safe way to school. And so it's for me, it's you need to show that it can be done and it can be done relatively easily and at little cost. And then, the governments can pick that up and institutionalize throughout the system and throughout the big strategic activities of the system. Like training or programs or school construction, etc.
That's correct. A lot of work is needed, but we can take very small steps at individual levels, and we can take very big step policy level and legislation from the political point of view and the government. And of course, patience is also required from parents and adults' point of view. I see, Chloe, that this work involves a lot of psychological and emotional toll because, working on children protection issues can be immensely stressful. How do you manage the mental and emotional challenges that come with this work, especially when facing setbacks or slow progress?
Oof. It's a really good question. I will tell you that I still remember the nightmares I was having when I was studying for my PhD at the time. And I was reading a lot about life histories of gang members in Central America and having these nightmares night after night. And today I still remember actually the night, but I don't have them any longer, which is good. No, it's true. It's a big toll. It's very tiring. But I think for me, at least, and I would probably guess, many colleagues as well, what is really frustrating is not that it's awful and, we see the suffering and the injustices everywhere. What is really frustrating is, again, the indifference, one, and two, the slow progress. 2025, almost 2026. And conflicts and war are everywhere in the world. And there is no funding for the issue. And it's not prioritized. And I say I don't understand. That frustrates me a lot. That's why, after trying, at the global level, trying, at the policy level, now I go down. I want to bottom up, because I want the revolution from the bottom to actually accelerate the progress. To me, that's the hardest.
I can totally understand that, and the funding part, because of course, when you're doing such good work and you really need funding, and like I sometimes laugh on decision makers, on these big people with big money. You go to them, you tell them a project and it's beautiful, impactful. They're not interested.
No.
You go to people and you tell them, like it's a dance move, it's a party, it's fun, and they are all of a sudden interested. The same is with the public. They're not ready to listen to a serious conversation where problems and solutions are discussed. They want to, like the content that goes viral has no tangible impact in it. Okay. It goes, if you do a dance video, if you do this, the influencer, the content creators, they're actually making people like you and me who are doing serious work frustrated.
Yeah,
because the general public is unfortunately inclined to those. They do not want solutions. They do not want to work hard. They just want escape. So escape is not coming from your conversation or my conversation, because we are reminding them about the problems. We are reminding them about the solutions. They need to work hard. They put in their efforts. And then there are content creators who are saying, let's forget it. Let's do this. Let's do that. So they are choosing their future. And, like they are making their choices. And it's really depressing.
It is. But, also at the same time, when I see you with your beautiful, amazing podcast, that gives me hope. When I see, kind of solidarity among colleagues, women, men, like kind of with the same vision and the same mission, it's really kind of, okay, maybe we're not mainstream, or maybe, we're not the most popular on earth. That's okay. But we understand each other, we support each other, we help each other, and maybe we'll reach out to a few people, not to masses. But within these few people, maybe it might help some, and other would have the mean and would decide to finance what we offer. Like, kind of in terms of solution. I think, kind of...
We need keep going.
Yeah, we need to keep hope.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Yes. And we need to support each other, and we need to keep going.
Definitely.
So you meet a lot of decision makers also.
Yeah.
And how do you ensure that the voices of the children and those effective communities are heard and taken into account in the high level policy discussions? Because you are their voice.
Yeah. In anything I've been doing, I always thought and said that the only ones I serve are the children, are the people in the community, no government, no international organization. No. I just serve people who is no voice, and it's our responsibility to give them some voice. I mean, one thing that if you want violence prevention to work, you need participation, but true participation. Why? Because you need trust. And if you impose something on someone, it's not the best way to, enhance trust. No one likes to be imposed anything. Suddenly, we come and we say, oh, I know better than you what you need in your context. So let me explain to you what we will do for you. No, it doesn't work that way. It's more in terms of, okay, you tell me and how we can work together. So it's participation, but it's not only with one group of stakeholders, it's with the student, or with the children, their parents, their caregivers, their community, and it could be online, could be in presence. People don't like when, I talk about participation, because it's kind of, it's going to be slow and it's complicated and blah, blah. No, it's actually the contrary. It's like when you have true participation, which is not consultation, it's not like, just say yes to what I propose to you. It's really kind of a true participation. It's how it works. Because, of course, it will take a little bit longer at the beginning, but then it will ensure that your program will last. And what we want is to build continuity. We don't want kind of a 6 months program. We want years and years and years of, kind of intervention in that school or in that community or in that household. So it's always worth doing it. And I mean, myself, I don't know how to do violence prevention without participation. So don't ask me, ask someone else.
Chloë, on a personal note, and your dedication to preventing violence against children is truly amazing. Was there a moment in your life or career when you realized that this would be the focus of your professional journey? And what motivates you to keep going instead of this challenges, not great help that should be there, and despite the emotional weight of the work. And how do you ensure that you're not taking this emotional weight back to your house, back to your family? Because there is a time when we have to really de-switch.
On the last one, I don't promise I'm not doing it. Uh, so, I think I was very lucky in a way because, since a very young, I was 15, 14, 15. I knew what I wanted to do. And I wanted to work for children's rights. And it's been the case, since I was 15 up until now. I never changed. But what I changed is, with whom, how, and so forth. But the mission is still there. And I think it came to me because I think I wanted to be of service since very young. But also was born in France. My grandparents did they lived through the World War II. And so I grew up with all the stories from World War II. And it was really kind of, in terms of my grandmother was telling us, like kind of resistance and, fighting for justice and fighting for human rights and all that. And I think that did impact quite a lot on me. And so very young, I, just figured that children's rights would be my mission. And up until now, I'm doing it. What I began in very local level, grassroots level in Mexico City. And then, I worked in India with orphan children. And then I worked with trafficked women and children in Montenegro. And then I joined big organizations like the World Bank or the IDB or the UNICEF. And now I'm, doing it as an independent advisor, and I'm really enjoying it. And I think that was kind of key for me to keep doing it. It's like I've never been attached to a career per se. I've always been attached to the mission. And so I never had any difficulty to quit or to say, I've tried, I won't be able to do, what I want to do here. So thank you very much, but I need to move on. That was never a difficulty for me, which, I feel very lucky because other people don't have this luxury. And that kept, some sanity in me because I was able, to move organization or even, to work independently and so forth. And that's it. And, for a while, I must admit that I wondered if I could do something else. And when I wondered, it was terrible. I think it was one of the biggest challenges in my life because I became emotional because it was as if, I was losing my light or losing, kind of star. And I recovered my energy and my passion when I started working again. So I said, okay, so I didn't lose it. It's still with me. And I think I will keep doing that, but differently. I think we can contribute many different ways. And I think, when you are open to that, it can be really life-saving.
Thank you so much for your time. One final message or anything that you would like to say about this conversation?
No, thanking you, Nadia, really wholeheartedly. Kind of we were talking about solidarity. I think it's exactly the best example of violence prevention. It doesn't cost anything to build bridges, and it's so much, it's so useful and so powerful to build these bridges because when we would need it the most, we don't know what life, has in store for us tomorrow, any of us. Yeah. Each time we have the opportunity to build a bridge and to help each other, I think we're stronger. And what this world needs is strong people, strong women, working together in their own, fields, but working strong in solidarity so that, we can resist to what's happening.
Thank you so much, Chloe. It was lovely talking to you. And I see you're such a beautiful person and you're very kind. You're very emotional, which is why I think we are connecting very deeply. And this is the work that needs emotional and a very responsible heart. Because you cannot just do it as a job, as you say. You can only do it when it's your mission and have your heart and soul in it, and only then you can achieve these results. And let's not get disappointed because we are not getting the right kind of help. Let's keep doing what is best, and people whoever is listening, I will request you all to please start supporting the ones who are doing actual work. And no matter how hard you try to escape from your realities, from your problems, from working hard on your solutions, ultimately you have to come back to us. And it's important that you come back right on time so that you can make your efforts and make your tomorrow better. And violence against children is something that we all need to work and we all need to resist and we all need to come in support of, be it on individual level, be it on government level, and on all the levels. And this was Chloe, and next week I'll be back with another amazing guest, another amazing topic and story. Please give your feedback, and thank you so much. Thank you.